right. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Sabbath. Roger Wade,
Good
how are you, Doc?
afternoon. I'm doing well. How are you doing, my friend?
Hey, I am doing quite fine today, man. It is good to see you. Man, this summer has been something else. Everybody's been on the road here and there and back and forth, and we know you are always on the road, Pastor Wade, but we are um, glad to see you in place. But it's our brother, our colleague that is on the road this go round.
Yeah. Yes. He has taken an opportunity to do ministry in another direction, in another way. And so, unfortunately, he will not be with us today, but we are just glad that he is praying for us. He sent us a text just before we went on. And so we thank him and we're praying for him where he's at as he's ministering.
Absolutely. I got word that he is actually in South Georgia today in some of my old stomping grounds, doing a crusade, a week of prayer, evangelistic meeting at a church that I used to pastor. So, Berean, and there in Brunswick, Georgia, we send a shout out to you and praying that the Holy Spirit will do a powerful work in what's going on there. Listen, if you are just joining us, I see some folk in the chat, Pastor Wade, that we want to recognize today. Who do we see that has joined us so far?
I'm gonna start at the bottom. I see here at the bottom of my screen Jennifer Sharon from the Chattanooga area. So we welcome her and thank you for being a part of Pastors Roundtable. I see Tammy Jamar also from the Chattanooga area. We have Myra Harris from the Bronx,
What?
New York.
All right. I see Rosie and Etienne has joined us. I saw Pastor Justin Stepp, who has joined us at the very beginning. Colleen Moody, Carlene Sinclair, both of them joining us from Florida, from Port St. Lucie, and some undisclosed secret point in Florida, Sister Sinclair. Then Nadia Stewart is joining us all the way from the left coast in Pasadena, California. Good to have Nadia with us today.
Yes, and we have Jay Henry, who's with us, and Rosemont Just is also with us, and she shared it in French. I can't even speak it. Deja 4:16. So we give God praise for that.
All right. I see Mama Bryant with us today, Vivian Bryant. She is our fearless South Florida Adventist Youth Federation leader. Good to have her with us. I see, Claremont. Carlene says that undisclosed secret place was Claremont, Florida. Andrew Brown, my cousin, is joining us from Berrien Springs, Michigan. Good to see you, Andy. Teresa Charles from Baltimore, and Aaron Smith. Good to have you as well. Listen, so Pastor Wade, last week, talk to us about last week, man. We almost barely kind of sort of got there for a hot minute last week.
We struck the match. We struck the match, and the flame blew out. Yeah, we were having some serious technical difficulties, and we believe it's the topic. We're gonna put it on the topic. We know that what we're doing is part of the agenda God wants to have, and so the enemy will do whatever it takes to stop that agenda. So we are preparing to redo that show, and so you will hear more about that as we get closer to the time, and making sure our guests line up, things like that. So we thank you for your patience. We thank you for waiting for us, and we will definitely get that taken care of and get that show out to you very soon.
Yeah, it's fascinating. For those of you that were not with us and may not know, we were attempting our second part at gun violence and things like the Second Amendment, things that pertain to that. And some people see that as safety issues. Other people see the other side and say it's an issue of civil liberties. And so we are excited to be able to bring that conversation to you. So just stay tuned. We want to bring that second part. We had a very, very robust conversation on it in part one, which you can go back and see. And if I recall correctly, Pastor Wade, we had a lot of tech difficulties on
We
part
sure did.
one as well.
We sure did. We did
Um,
have a stop. So
yeah. All
we
right.
know it's not necessarily our stuff, but we know the enemy is also alive and well and doing his job to try and trip up the people of God. So we're not gonna give up. We're gonna do it again.
Yeah. We'll get it. We'll get it. All right. So, Pastor Wade, what's on the table today, man?
Listen, before I say what's on the table today, I wanna just give a shout out. And she's not on, but she's one of our strong members of the PRT family. That is Stephanie Scott. She had another engagement to go to, but we worshiped together at church
Oh, wow.
this morning. She came up to Nashville, so we were together worshiping. She wanted me to make sure to say hello to the PRT family and to let them know that she misses y'all, but she's going to catch us on the rewatch. She's looking forward to watching this segment on the rewatch. So thank you, Stephanie, for your support. And I just saw Edison Trintobagan in the chat. Edison and I grew up together in a while and in New York, and it's so good to have him join us. And he's here saying it's been a while since seeing you guys. So he's been on before, but now he's getting back into the swing of things. So we praise God. But on the table today, we are excited to delve into this topic, dealing with Adventist musician and the network, Adventist Musicians Network. We're going to talk a little about the network. We're going to talk about the ministry that it has and the impact that it's having in our community here in the Adventist network area.
Awesome. And I am looking forward to this conversation. I think we're going to even dip into some of the issues about what worship looks like post-pandemic. I know a lot of us are in our churches and we're not everybody's not all the way there. Are the musicians back? Are they coming back? Can we afford them? All those things. We want to dip our toes into those waters today. But at the table, we have some phenomenal individuals with us. Both of them a part of the Adventist Musicians Network. And we have first with us Joel Godwin. He is he's going to say Goodwin. I think I'm pronouncing it wrong. He's going to help me get that right when we get him on. But he's evangelist, entertainer, espoused, eclectic, AMN co-administrator along with other Facebook-centered organizations. He's a minister of music and a band director at 5 different churches right now. He is a producer, a vocal music arranger. He's done musical projects such as the Jazz Soul Metal Experience, the Diaspora, Jenna Dean, and many others in many genres of music coming soon. Our second guest is Brother Thomas McPhee. He is a Florida native. Florida natives in the house need to shout out. Florida native. He was born in an Adventist home, and at an early age, he showed an interest in music, which was the beginning of his private lessons. He developed interest in vocals, particularly in choirs, that led to studying various choirs and choir directors over the years. This desire for music has opened opportunities to play for, teach, and direct choirs and continue to have a love for choir music. He was invited by the founder, Sean Wilson, to be a part of the Adventist Musicians Network, and he worked closely with our former CEO, Sarah Sultan, and is now working with the executive team to continue the vision and the growth of the network. So, family, we want to welcome at this time these gentlemen, Joel and Thomas McPhee. Welcome, gentlemen. Glad to have you guys with us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Good to have you. Hey, there's a shout out from Sister.
What's going on?
Yo.
Hey.
All right. So, gentlemen, we did not read your full bios and all that kind of stuff. We're going to have a word of prayer. We begin because we know there's a lot more that you have going on, and we want to give you an opportunity to just address and greet our audience today. But we're just going to offer a word of prayer, and then we will give you some time just to say hello to the folk. Pastor Wade, would you pray for us as we get started?
Well, let's pray. Let's pray. Father, we thank you again for your love, your mercy, and your grace. We thank you for our guests today. We pray for our viewers, and we pray for our tech. We pray, Lord, that our discussion will bring glory to your name. Is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. All right.
Amen.
Thomas, we'll start with you, man. We're going to give you, so you guys aren't preachers. We usually give preachers about 39.7 seconds because we know how they roll, and what we do with prophetic time. You guys are musicians. We're just going to give you the mic. Anything, Thomas, you just like to share with our audience before we get into our topic today? The time is yours.
Thank you, Pastor Paul. I do indeed count it a to be with both you and Pastor Wade today and the pastor's round tree table, or the pastor's round table. I put tree in there, and your listening audience on today. Really excited about this particular topic. We all just want to be a help to the body. We just want to use our gifts that God has placed in us to edify the church, and also to make sure that we are doing our part in further the Word of God. So we're just excited to be here. We are excited about the network that God has started within the Adventist faith, and we want to make sure that we are giving God our best because He did give His to us. So again, thank you for this opportunity, and we're looking forward to the conversation today.
Amen.
Awesome. Joel.
All right. Um, well, first and foremost, I really appreciate you all having us on the program for sure. Um, it was hilarious. You all chuckled at this whole me saying that I'm the minister of music and the or band director at five churches. That is a true and living
Wow.
statement. It's a
Mercy.
lot going on. Part of that happened because of the pandemic, and I guess we'll kind of delve into that later. I'll talk about just a little bit about the Adventist Musician Network real quick. Obviously, Thomas and I both have had to, I guess, step into even more leadership roles because of course, the passing of our CEO a few months ago. But we've definitely been on the admin team since I'm trying to think of when he put together the admin team. So Sean Wilson, of course, is the founder, and I would say within a year of starting the Adventist Musician Network, he started in 2015. So I think by 2016, he put together an admin team, and me and Thomas have been on the admin team since then. Sarah became the CEO in 2017 and continued, of course, until a couple months ago when she died. So yeah, so we're two of the admins. There's still quite a few more, and we're just all working together to try to make things work in the absence of Sarah. And yeah, I think that's all I'll
Wow.
say.
Well, that's awesome. And again, we are greatly appreciative for you gentlemen joining us today. So let's start there. Let's start with going in a little deeper on the Adventist Musicians Network. Let's start with Thomas. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the history of the network? What is it? I mean, we know it's AMN, but what actually is it? When was it created? We just heard it was around 2015. And what were the original objectives? What were the objectives of the group? So a little bit about the history. What is it? What are some of the objectives? And Joel, feel free to hop in when you
Hmm.
feel moved.
Sure. Well, again, as you stated, when it started by Sean, it was basically a online group where the concept was how the platform for Adventist musicians, whether you're instrumentalist or vocalist, to be a part of a place where we could all come together, network, share our responsibilities that we have as musicians, ministers of music, singers, as well as share experiences together, strengthen each other, to use each other's experiences to kind of grow each other and just be a support group. Basically, is kind of how it started. What happened was when it started on Facebook, it started to expand. Before long, we of course had Adventist musicians that were within the United States, but then when we looked up, we had musicians that were outside of the borders of the U.S. So it started. Um, of course, at a certain point in time, Sean had something that God had laid in his heart to so he was just, I guess, like, which of course at that point in time, he asked Sarah if she would step in as the CEO of the group. At that point in time, then, as they say, history was made because when Sarah stepped in, the thing just kind of exploded. There was different aspects added to it. There was different um, uh, individual brought into the network as within the states. Also, we had members that were coming in from outside of the country, which of course had already started with the Facebook group. But basically, what Sarah did was to take that Facebook and make it full blown ministry, uh, which is where we are today with the various programs that the network use. And then also, one of the very key components, even from the initial starting of the AMN family, was to make sure that we coupled the musicians and the pastors. That was one of the things that was very key. And to continue Sarah as well to make sure that there was a marriage with the music in the church and also the leadership as far as the pastoral leadership of the church as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a very key relationship there. Pastors and
Oh, absolutely.
musicians and technicians. That's
Oh yeah, yeah.
that's
We've had some AV people in the group too. There's a bunch of them in the group too.
Yeah,
I'll add
we
to
got
that.
that for
Right. And so I'll add to that and say that as far as target audience, Thomas already talked about just Adventist musicians. Another key component to the membership in the Facebook group, because like I said, it started as a Facebook group. And I think right before Sarah took over, we actually started a fan page. Um, so yeah, but yeah, so I would say it's basically anybody that operates within the Adventist church services, including non-Adventists, were invited to the group, and also people that were Adventist artists, so people that actually were professional singers and musicians that traveled around and doing stuff. So yeah, those people were also included in the network. I think the focus was definitely people that operate in church services. But yeah, like I said, those two groups, non-Adventists that also operate in church services, and also Adventist artists for sure. During the pandemic, like right when the pandemic started, I know Sarah and I and a few others, we had been talking about starting some shows,
huh?
and we never could. Our schedules were always so busy that we
Uh,
never could do anything with them. But as soon as COVID shut everything down, Sarah and I had a talk, and from those talks, we developed two shows. I would say actually, she developed like most of the first show, but it definitely came out of the talks that we had. And that show is called AMN Live, and that show is actually we're actually doing it tonight. We just started that back up last month.
oh,
AMN Live is a Saturday night show that highlights various Adventist artists, musicians, and even pastors that sing and do music. Like we have one coming on tonight, Hassani Tate, who will be on
okay.
tonight. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, so
Hey,
that should be a lot of.
y'all
He's
need to get
actually
Roger. I hear Roger sings. I'm just playing. I don't know. I
all
have
right.
no
Let's
no
go. Let's do it. I'm with
Don't do
it.
that. Don't do that. We'll shut this internet down.
Yeah, but yeah, Sonny, he's real cool. He actually just moved. So of course I'm from Kentucky. Just moved to Kentucky, and he's the new
Yeah.
pastor at Magazine Street, Seventh Day Adventist Church. So we're working together very closely. I remember it seems like everybody was looking for information on him when he came to the church, and we discovered, of course, that he actually is a musician, multi instrumentalist, singer. He sings like all the time at church. So we're gonna talk to him about some of that tonight. But yeah, so like I said, so many Adventist artists, and we were trying to find ways to give them a platform. And of course, during the pandemic, especially when people weren't really doing much of anything, we decided to finally go ahead with these programs and just find ways to give Adventist musicians a platform to showcase, I guess, their music and even their plans for what's next. So that show have, like I said, Sarah developed that one, and then really, we still continue to talk and trying to figure out other ways to do the same thing. So the next thing that happened is after our talks, I was like, let's involve pastors. So we had literally One, we took an hour and developed a Wednesday afternoon show. Um, and I kind of did an outline, and I promise you, and that was like that might have been like Sunday on a Sunday. And when I tell you that Sarah took that thing and ran with it, I
She did.
mean, we literally had a show within 3 days. That like within 3 days it was Wednesday, and she she put a show together.
Wow.
So that show, which she'll be back, it'll be back on the air soon. This show actually, it's called Midday Service, and it's like Wednesday afternoon, like noon or whatever, like depending on your time zone, of course. Um, and this particular show features an Adventist artist singing a song, and then a pastor giving a devotion. It's like a half-hour show. So a pastor gives like a little mini sermon. So we've had like different Adventist pastors every week. So hopefully we'll start that one back up soon also. So okay.
But let me see if I
So
can synthesize what we've heard. So Adventist Musicians Network, we know it's start off as a Facebook group,
Mm-hmm.
but it's used as a support group for Adventist and
Mm-hmm.
church musicians, as
Mm-hmm.
well. You do various shows that help give some exposure to various Adventist musicians, an
Mm-hmm.
outlet. You do some stuff with pastors to try to develop and strengthen relationships between
Yes.
musicians and pastors. Did I leave anything out?
Yeah, that's it. I think. Oh, I guess the other big thing is just to make sure that we've tried to work more closely with I guess conferences, and I
Okay.
know that we've even had discussions with the general conference for a couple of things. There was a controversial letter that went out as far as what the music was going to be for the last general conference that we had, and especially a lot of black people, I would say, felt very left out. So we banded
Hmm.
together as a network, as the network admins, and drafted up a revision. Um, so we turned that revision in. I won't. They didn't use the revision per se, but from that they did revise their standards to reach a compromise.
Okay.
So I
All
think
right.
that's one thing that we wanted to make sure of is that we also try to have some kind of relationship with the conference. I think one of the key things that we wanted to do also with establishing that relationship was to actually be endorsed by the conference in some way. So we were
Right.
able to, if you look on our page, and especially when we start our shows, they say that we are um, basically we have permission to use that Seventh Day Adventist name in our stuff, and that's something that we did because just to make sure that we didn't have any trouble with the conference, and also to start to build a relationship with them.
Awesome. So it's
so,
like
so
you
I,
weren't trying to be. Go ahead, Raj.
I wanted to find out. I heard about I heard how you got started 2015. What
Mm-hmm.
was happening before that
Oh
that
man,
that that helped us that
Mm.
forced the hand to say, hey, I got to get this Facebook group started.
yeah.
I mean,
So
it's been around for a long time. I know we're going to delve into a little bit of that in one of the previous questions, but in a general sense, what was a musician doing prior to 2015 without the network?
who knows? I tell you, there were a few Facebook groups that everybody was in, but nothing for musicians. There were a few, like there was a group called you're a Seven Day Adventist when, and there's a group called Seven Day SDAs only. Like just there's quite a few Facebook groups, but they weren't really focused, so to speak. And I think that Adventist Musician Network was a way to actually focus on Adventist music. Now, Sean Wilson, who was the founder, he and I went to Oakwood at the same time, and we're like almost best friends even to this day. So I remember being in those, I guess, those inaugural talks about starting the group, like when he started, and it was just like, I mean, it just made such sense to do it because, like I said, there wasn't an outlet. There's even a few, I guess, they're kind of lightweight, but they're like maybe Pentecostal themed groups, Baptist themed groups, but definitely nothing for Adventists. And there's obviously so much musical talent within the Adventist churches. Like, why not um, censor these things and give a platform for Adventist artists to be heard, and especially something that centers on the Adventist message, so to speak.
That's good stuff. Listen, Raj, just before you go to that next question, I'd like to do an audience check right quick and see what kind of musicians that we may have in the chat today. So, you
Uh,
are a musician. If you sing or if you play, if you're an instrumentalist, would you just throw that in the chat for us? Just shout that out. We want to know if you play the piano, you play the saxophone, the trombone, whatever, the drums, the bass, whatever it is. Just throw that in there. If you are a singer or in a choir, if you just shout out your choir or your praise team, if you are a musician, we want to give you some love today. As Pastor Wade goes and takes us to that next section there.
So thank you for sharing a little bit of the history. But I want to
yeah.
find out a little bit about what's happening now. What are some of the activities, the current activities? You talked about two of the online programs that you have, the Saturday night program and the midweek program. What are some of the other activities you do, and even some of the resources that AMN offers?
Well, as of now, we are actually there. There's two key projects that we're actually involved in now. We
Hmm.
are actually just started talking last month to start a mentoring program of sorts. So for up and coming musicians who may have questions about their art, their craft, how to develop it, how to take it to the next level, or how to even become a professional musician, we will have a mentoring program that will be rolling out here soon for musicians within, of course, Adventist network. We also have a project where we're working to put together a I guess a supplement would be the best word to do it to the current hymnal that we have within
Ah,
Adventism. We want to have it to be a multicultural book so that we will have music that will touch not just us here in the United States, but that will represent the entire world church as a whole. So we're working to trying to get that coordinated with GC as well, because we do want to make it clear that it's not to replace the hymnal in any way, but we want to offer it as a supplement music book so that where we are, where you go within the Adventism, that you would have music that represents all of the regions that is represented by the church. We are, of course, always trying to help to develop and to market our artists within Adventist Church. One of the things that myself being born in Adventist, I have to admit, growing up, I wasn't really too involved in, going to Oakwood or churches, music scene. I was more so in,
Right.
of course, churches that was actually paying for me to come play. So that's kind of
Hmm.
what I was doing. But of course, I did play at my home church as well. But the thing is, we want to make sure that we are inclusive with all artists and that they are given a platform where they can be developed, where they have the opportunity to have more exposure. And also, and again, we mentioned this, we want to make sure that the musicians are aware of that needs to be in place, the pastoral side, the ministry. So we want to just kind of keep cultivating the relationships, musicians, and of course make sure that we are doing our best to give God our best in what we do with our network and team members.
Hmm.
Awesome. Well, I wish you were around when I was coming up. I took up the tenor saxophone. That was my
Oh
instrument of
wow.
choice.
wow.
And I have to give a shout out to Mr. Ivan Chester, who was my Pathfinder director,
Hmm.
who gave me an opportunity to play for Pathfinder Day in the afternoon. And my B flat key was broken, but he still supported me and still said, "Hey, you did a great
Uh,
job." And but I couldn't find a spot in the church choir to play my tenor sax.
Hmm. Oh wow.
It wasn't part of our church culture at the time. But I imagine now you have those kinds of encouragement and resources to students who are interested in playing other non-conventional church instruments, because
Right.
not everybody plays the piano.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. And that's the thing too. Being able to have musicians, and that's the thing. Everyone is not going to play the keyboards. They're not going to play
Right,
the
right,
organ. They're not going to play
exactly.
the bass. But so the thing is to be able to have a spirit of being inclusive. We want to make sure that there are not musicians that's coming up that feel that I have to go and play elsewhere where I will be appreciated, but we can be appreciated at home.
Mm.
And then, of course, share your gifts and develop your gifts at home. I've heard it said probably all my life as a musician that it's a shame that we have all of the gifts, these gifted musicians within our church, but we're not utilized in our church. We're out helping and building other ministries and not
Right.
necessarily building our home church ministry. So we want to make sure that we can have the mindset or to make sure that musicians are in the way of thinking that I can also lend my talents and do something at home and not feel ostracized and not feel that I have to pick up my instrument or pick up the gift that God's given me and use it elsewhere.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah, I feel like I need to disclose some stuff too. Now that Pastor Wade is talking about his tenor set, and
Go
it
ahead, Pastor.
to speaks to kind of what you were just talking about, Thomas, as far as the inclusivity in our own spaces. When I started school, my parents made sure, or they didn't ask us. They demanded that my
Mm.
brother and I play an instrument. Um,
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
and my mom was so intent that she wanted somebody in the house to play, drum roll, a violin. So
Nice.
at
Mm.
7 years old, they stuck a violin in my hand, sent me to school, went to classes, and I played violin for like 7 years
Wow.
in elementary school. But probably, as most of you know, in the context of our worship, typically, especially, there's not much space and place for violins, which meant, for now, never mind the fact that I hated every minute of it and couldn't stand the sight of a violin.
Hilarious. I can relate.
Take that off the table. But I learned to play the violin, and then when they finally gave me a choice, I set the violin down, but I had to do something. So what did I pick up? Guess. I'll give anybody a guess.
The
A
piano?
Piano.
saxophone. No, it was a saxophone. I
Oh,
went
come
straight to
Oh,
that
on.
so
No wonder
alto
Wow.
we
sax.
kindred
Wow.
spirits.
There you go. That's right.
Wow.
And I did piano for about a week, and my teacher moved
Oh,
away,
wait.
never took any more piano. Yeah, Roycelyn, she said sax too. Yeah, but yeah, so making that space for musicians across the spectrum. I went to academy. That's somebody knows that's code for something. I went to Adventist Academy, and so we had band and we had orchestra type stuff there, but not a lot of that transferred over into the worship setting inside of a church.
Right. Right.
Roger, I'd like to swap questions with you if I can, because this next question, I think, kind of peels off of some of what we were just talking about. So I'm going to skip down to our fourth question. Hey, Being Footman says OJA. That's right. But one of the things that we often see and that we often hear is how particularly Adventist musicians are underappreciated, undervalued, and underpaid. That's what we hear.
Mercy. Uh-oh.
Um, those are things that we
Hey,
hear. So
Uh-oh.
Adventist musicians get paid? Adventist
Whoa.
musicians get
Right.
paid? I didn't know that.
wow.
So, gentlemen, here we go. Do you guys see this often? Does this have any modicum of truth to it? As if you experienced any of this? And what are some, if it is true, then what are some of the things that pastors and churches can do better to address this? And I'd like to address it particularly in areas or in churches where financial resources are somewhat limited. So,
Oh,
who wants
mercy.
to go first? I know they're going to fight over who wants to go first on this one.
No, fight. 1, 2, 3, fight. I can go first. Um, well, I've seen this issue come about uh, in various churches that I've operated in, even various Adventist churches. Um, there are some churches. I would say in my area, um, there's been limited budgets, but they do pay something, and I think I can definitely, especially speak for the last 10 years, definitely. Before then, I will say that at the church I grew up in and that I just came back to recently, um, traditionally growing up, um, they would only pay musicians every once in a while, mostly guest musicians. It has evolved since then. The last 10 years, whenever I have played, I've gotten paid. And there's another, like I said, African American Adventist church that's pretty prominent. That's in Louisville, and they also have paid their musicians. Now, it's not as much as I would get maybe playing other days of the week, but it is something. I actually had to
Mhm.
have a talk about budgets this week with the church. Not for me, but just looking into, I guess, expanding the staff. So we had a talk about the budget for that. So I think that the churches here, they're willing to pay. I think that a lot of times music has not been prioritized in Adventist churches for a couple of reasons. Number one, so many people have just done stuff volunteer. Some people believe that it should be a volunteer thing, and then sometimes people just don't have the money to budget like that. And then also because of the volunteer thing and just whatever other reason, many people do feel like music isn't as much of a priority as maybe some other things, may be it evangelism or preaching or whatever else. Now, my hope and dream, which may be just a fantasy that may never happen, is that the conferences actually set aside music budgets for the church, so that it
Oh
doesn't
wow.
just come from church
Oh
expense
wait,
budget.
wait. Oh wait. Back that up. Say that one more time. Where? Heard that one before. I.
I know it. Yeah, it's been my hope for quite a while that conferences, set aside uh, budgets for music, you
Mm,
know, um, just like they do for preachers.
Right?
I think
wow.
that I think that churches would be. I mean, it's just my personal opinion. I think the churches would be more effective if they had that kind of budget. Because I think about, like, for example, Magazine Street. They have some um, trying to pay off building debt right now, and just so that we can focus money on ministry and other things. But at the same time, within that same budget, which is usually church expense money, and of course, like the 10%, of course, is going to go to the conference. So then you got 5% and whatever offerings that people may give. And some people might not even give 5%; they might give 1%, or just small offerings. But whatever those small offerings are, is what's going to stay at the church. So out of that, of course, they got to do the building fund. They got to do whatever employees they got at the church besides the pastors and the musicians and stuff. So some churches just don't have much to work with at all. Some do, but many don't. And I would actually say there's probably more that don't than than there are that do. So I don't know. Like I said, maybe one day. Maybe
But
one day.
Joe, I think you
That's
have
fascinating.
kind of opened up an interesting conversation there.
Hmm.
That maybe conferences can look at that, but then you will have the pushback in terms of how do we identify what's the best amount to go to different churches based on membership given. But they
Yeah,
look at that
exactly.
teachers and even subsidizing teachers at the
Hmm.
church school
Yeah,
is a
that's another one.
big, you know,
That's another one.
they
That's
come to some
definitely.
major. But you
Hmm.
have that is a very good, interesting comment you shared, and
Mhm.
I'll be willing to share that with my leadership and see what that is. But I think someone shared in the chat that some churches as a whole still do not. This is Aaron says that some churches as a whole do not value the
Right.
ministry of music. Music sets the tone for worship. He shares. Just to kind of jump in the middle of this, Anselm, what are some of the things you can share? Both you, Thomas, and Joe can share to so some of our listeners that can help them to appreciate the value of the
Mhm.
music industry, so that that conversation can happen at a real pace. What are some of the things we can do to build the value of the music
Mm. That's a good one. You want to go first, Thomas? I'll let you get talked enough.
Yeah. Well, what I would say, and this may sound a little strange coming from a musician, but I think you are not going to, if you have someone who's playing, let's start there. Someone who's playing in church. Um, and as a musician, I don't personally think that everyone that sits at an instrument and plays on that instrument is actually a musician.
Mm.
Right.
So you're talking about paying someone as a musician. I'm thinking about someone who actually spends time developing their craft.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who is trying to do, who's doing their best, who's putting in the time, the effort to to improve upon what they're doing. So when they do sit at their instrument, no matter what it is, they are giving a excellent praise on their. So I don't think just because someone sits at a piano and or at an instrument and put their hands to the instrument is actually someone that should be getting any type of financial compensation.
Mm-hmm.
I often, as they do, when I first started playing for churches, if I could go back and give them some refunds for all the services that I messed up, that probably would be a good thing. But of course, that's not something that I can go back. I will go back and do it this time. But I think what has to happen, it has to be a reteaching, so to speak. In order
Mm-hmm.
to say that something has to be appreciated, you have to understand why it should be appreciated. Sad to say that we don't hear that a lot in churches.
Right.
You hear it more now in pockets, but you don't actually hear about the appreciation of the music in the church service, how it can help to enhance the service, sets the atmosphere. So I think we have to start at square one. We have to start at the teaching, uh, so that individuals can understand why it is important. Once someone understands why something is important, then you can start the conversation of why you should value this. You can put value and place value on that particular area.
Yeah, this is and your audio, at least on my end, is kind of going in and out just a bit, Thomas. So I didn't quite catch everything that you said there, but I think we got the general gist of it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I, I wonder if Roger, to your question about the how do we help churches value this. I grew up in a church that had great music. I was a pastor's kid. I grew up at Mount Sinai in Orlando, Florida. We had musicians like Winifred Rivers, Roger Ryan, Dwayne
Oh,
Adele,
yeah.
um, J- Jackie, Jacqueline Ross with choirs, Pat
Mm.
Brown with some of our choirs, some of the Aeolians, people who were Aeolians at one point coming and doing our choir ministries as well as our keyboard musicians and all that. And so I grew up in that environment. And then when I left there, my next church was Oakwood University. So I go to
Mm-hmm.
Oakwood. Music is what music is at Oakwood. So imagine as even as a pastor and a pastor's kid, when I left Oakwood and got my first church with 20, 30 something members out in the country. One of them had about 40 members, the other had about 15 members, 13 members. Um, and and there's nobody there to play. And so I'm trying to pull out my 1 week's worth of piano lessons to play with song service and all that kind of stuff. And so I think a large part of that, Roger, to your question, is a lot of, and when you understand that in North America, the majority of our Adventist churches in North America have 150 members or less.
Mm-hmm.
They are small churches, limited budgets, and they probably also, in many cases, don't have the talent pool that you have in larger cities, larger churches. So I think one of the things is exposure. People in a lot of our churches just have not been exposed to what worship can be when the music is at a level that exudes excellence. And so they're just used to what they get. And yeah, they'll see an Oakwood College church now on TV, on the internet, but they're like, yeah, they're a big church, they can afford that, or they have that talent pool and we don't. And so people just say, that'll never be us. But I think
Ooh.
if we had to expose them to what their building will feel like when the music
Yeah.
is, how their members and their family members and their neighbors and guests that they bring to church will respond when music is at a certain level in their building. I think that helps to change the appreciation level and the value level.
Hey,
Awesome.
that's a
Awesome.
good thing. I'll add to that just slightly. I think about like growing up for me, and you actually made a very good point about just when music, when churches are exposed to good music, they'll understand maybe how important it is, like especially on a regular basis. I remember growing up, um, we didn't have drums, and actually, and we had to fight to get a Hammond organ in church. Now we're like, now we have a full band and all that stuff, and we have had one for years. And we're doing like progressive music. But I remember growing up, we were doing like semi-progressive music, but I mean, we were doing it with a piano, and every once in a while we would hire a drummer and a bass player. And I remember the drummer would have to bring his drums every Sabbath that he showed up. Um, which of course, like I said, thankfully it didn't have to happen every week. Uh, we were having some.
Yeah, didn't quite hear
Oh,
that.
right. Well, I guess we'll get back to that. But yeah, that's just interesting. So yeah, like I said, with that church, like I said, the church we finally got a really cool music program with actual music staff. A lot of churches still to this day don't have that, and in fact, there are some churches where like progressive music programs are still frowned upon it within the Adventist church. And I'm sure we can all think of at least one or two Adventist churches that are actually predominantly black, where people are just like, no drum, we'll have a piano, we'll do. Um, so of course it speaks to diversity in the church, but it also speaks to some of the obstacles that have had to happen just to have a full band in some of the churches.
As you were sharing there about types of music, I remember my father, who was one of the beginners of the steel band in the church in Trinidad and Tobago. And he shared a story about a deacon throwing the pan out of the church because steel pans were not supposed to be in the Adventist church. There is so much, there's so much passion behind music in the church.
Yes.
And some people don't realize how passionate they can be. I was at a church and just to have a full band. Keyboard, the organ was locked, and no one else could play it, but the organ person could play it. No one else could touch it. And the musician that was there at the time was only regulated to the Hammond organ. He was not able to play the pipe organ, which he does very well. So passion is the passion and the feelings about music runs deep in the church. There is so much there's so much passion behind music.
Thomas, I think Thomas, I need you to probably mute your
some people don't
or
realize.
turn down the volume on your speakers? Is
Oh
that
yeah,
you?
hold on.
Yeah, we're getting that audio coming back through.
I put myself on mute just to make sure it wasn't me.
Yeah, it's
Looks
coming
like
through,
I'm
Thomas.
good. I'm good. Yeah. Put yourself on mute
Okay.
for a second, maybe.
Yeah. So listen, I got one more thing I got to throw in here
Yeah.
because this would be a real discussion unless I did it. So here we go. I'm gonna get in a whole bunch of trouble. All right. So oftentimes, and I saw Mark put this in the chat earlier.
Okay.
He said something about
Well,
and Mark
one
was
of the things
my
I do think is needed.
There we go.
oh, okay, man, that's on a serious delay, Thomas.
Okay.
The audio there. But okay, so Mark put in there
I have
should
one here.
be
Okay.
preaching and music, not preachers versus musicians.
Is that better?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yes.
But that audio is a lot clearer now, crisper, but it's at a crazy
Let's go
delay.
to-
There's a crazy
I guess
latency
I'm the
going on.
technical issues.
All right. Okay, go ahead and get in trouble. Let me get into my trouble right quick.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so I have had musicians, Joel, who have sat in a pew during prayer meeting
Yeah.
and would not get up and play for a 10-minute song service, 15-minute song service because the church was not in a position to pay them. So they were good musicians. So they weren't writing any music. They weren't directing any choirs. This was just a song service for a prayer meeting or a song service for, but they felt like they would not do it because they were not getting paid. I'm not gonna lie. I got issues with that. I have huge issues with that.
That's so
Why?
good. I can speak on that because I'm one of those
Yeah.
musicians. No, it's
Okay.
I'm just
I
kidding.
love it.
Okay. I'm semi kidding. I'll say this as a musician, and of course, I talked about how many churches I play for.
Right.
And I also do more than that too. Like I produce, of course. Sometimes I sing. Um, I have more of a bluesy rock type of voice, so I don't sing. I do sing in church a lot, but not as much as others do because I just don't have that type of voice. But I mean, I'm always doing music, so sometimes I literally just want to come to church and enjoy without everybody asking me to play.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair.
And sometimes,
yeah.
Oh,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. I was gonna say,
Well,
sometimes I do, and honestly, I actually get bored, like because I'm doing so much music, I actually get bored with it a lot. I'm always trying to find something outside of music to do. Um, so a lot of times I do go places that people are like, play, and sometimes I'm like super eager, but sometimes I'm just like, I really just came to kind of chill, be in the back. I almost try to sit all the way in the back so nobody sees me sometimes, but
Okay.
so I do understand. I understand why some musicians would go to church and actually attend, and I also understand like the frustrations on the other side. It's like we have this really good musician here, and they don't want to play, you know.
Okay.
So,
Hey, you know what? That's real, and I can appreciate that because I think Roger and I know, and every pastor knows, there are some events that we don't want to go to because we know if we show up, they're going to ask us to pray, or they're going to ask us to do thought, or they're going to ask us to do whatever. And so
Actually,
go ahead.
one of my mentors shared with me when you walk into the room, just be prepared to do it. So,
Yeah.
but Joel, I appreciate what you just shared because I never really thought of it from that perspective.
Right.
That the musician who comes probably just wants to come and worship, just like everybody else does. And so we as leaders, and I have to say, we as leaders need to be mindful of that. That their souls need to be watered also.
oh yeah, absolutely. And I know that.
Yeah.
I mean, even there's times where even at church, like the church that I'm at now, like I've actually, this is an interesting thing to say, but sometimes I've actually literally paid other musicians out of pocket to come play or sing or whatever, just so
Oh,
that I
that'll
can sit back.
Mhm.
You know.
yeah. All right, I'm gonna kill a little time because I see
Yeah, go for it.
if Thomas can get back, and so I'm gonna kill it probably by killing my reputation with my musician friends.
Uh-oh,
Uh,
let's go.
so so
Let's do
so
it.
again, so here's I gotta stay. I'm gonna keep playing devil's advocate on the
Okay.
paying part, money part,
Hmm.
because has
Yeah.
always created a lot of tension, a lot. So I was seeing in the chat there are a lot of people who were making the point that weren't musicians, Levites, and
Oh
weren't
yes.
Levites paid out of the tithe, which goes right along with the thing that you brought up about the conference having a
Hmm.
budget to be able to disperse. And that
Hmm.
sounds great. I would love that. But here's the part that is often left out of that discussion, right? And maybe about 15 years ago, we started hearing this more prevalent that particularly in Adventist churches, we ought to pay these musicians because they are Levites and Levites were paid out of the tithe.
Right.
That's absolutely undeniably true that Levites were paid out of the tithe, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
But here's the other part is that everybody who had anything to do with the worship service were Levites, and they were
Hmm.
paid out of the tithe as well.
Hmm.
So the brothers who were there cleaning up the altar after all those
Right.
burnt
Exactly.
offerings,
Yep.
they
Hmm.
were Levites and they were paid out of the tithe. Today, we would probably call them the deacons, the
Hmm.
people who were making the worship services flow and who were maybe standing at the door and ushering and
Usher.
telling people they were Levites and they were
Right.
paid out of the tithe. The person who's leading out in Sabbath school or teaching the lesson, they were Levites and they were paid out of the tithe. Whenever we have those discussions, we tend to leave all of those things out of that equation and just say, well, the musicians were Levites and they were paid out of the tithe, so the church
Right.
ought to pay. But if we're using that logic, then
Mhm.
we can't just use it in that one case. We would have to be, just be fair
Right.
with it and say everybody who was serving in that priestly capacity,
Right.
and they were all paid out of that tithe. And
Right.
if that's what we're going to say, then we're back to that point of can my elders. I got elders who don't ask for a dime and who go and visit in people's homes and in prisons and nursing homes. I got deacons who will show up in the middle of the night to to fix a broken pipe or a toilet, and we don't pay them a dime. And there's a whole lot of things there
Right.
that, and
Ooh, I got a
I'm
good
just
answer for this one.
devil's advocate on that as
Yeah.
far as the investment of time and effort, energy and resources, and even expertise, professional expertise sometimes that go into all of these other volunteer positions. Somebody says, well, but what makes the musician a paid position and not any of these other positions?
I have two words that will
Oh, by the way,
maybe
can I
that
before
question.
can I get I need to throw one more in, or
Oh
my
yeah, go
treasury
on,
staff.
throw it in there, Doc. Go for it.
Treasury staff. Treasury
Hmm.
staff that spends hours and hours counting money, paying bills, doing all that kind of stuff, hours when everybody else has left the church and all those things.
Hmm.
And a lot of churches do give a stipend to their
Yeah,
treasury
they sure do. And I used to be on the
staff.
treasury. I used to be a treasurer
Yeah.
too, or on the treasury
So
staff. I didn't get paid
how
for it, but I
how
was
do
on
we
there.
respond to those kinds of
Wow.
challenges to, man, that person's not going to play, not going to sing unless we pay him?
And I would actually I've been a deacon and I've been on the treasury, like counting money. So I've done both. I think I did both of those before I started like actually playing on a regular basis at church. So yeah, I would say that when it comes to Bible workers do be getting paid though. They Bible workers
Yes,
mostly,
they do.
yeah, a lot of them do. I'm not sure what happens in 2022, but I know that I've done some of that too, and we got paid. I guess like sometimes. Some people more than others. But yeah, so basically, I would say that when it comes to church service, there is a level of preparation and expectation from musicians that is only rivaled by preachers.
Okay.
I can be a janitor or I can be a usher, and it's not going to take as much preparation to get like things together. Like I'm not like the janitors meeting or the ushers meeting isn't going to be anywhere as nearly as strenuous as like learning songs, teaching songs, and having that level of excellence in worship service. Same with treasury. And like I said, I'm one that's done the deacon thing, I've done the treasurer thing, and I've done the music thing. And I would say, and I've even done the preaching thing. And I would
All
say
right.
that preaching and music, I think, like I said, there's a level of expectation, there's a level of preparation that just does not, that doesn't, I guess it just doesn't happen with the other things. Like there can be sometimes. So for example, it may be like a Sabbath where there may be some meetings or there may be some things going on. For example, there may be a huge conference or something, and then the deacons and the janitors have to like really do a lot of work. But like I said, on a regular basis, that those expectations and those preparations are only rivaled, in my opinion, by preaching.
Okay. All right.
Well,
Welcome back,
you
Tom.
know,
Yes, technical
Hey, hey.
difficulties.
All right.
uh,
Sounds a
I,
lot better.
just jumping in on that question, Pastor Paul, and Joe touched on it. There's a certain amount of energy and preparation that goes into this. I've I guess fortunately or unfortunately have had this conversation with pastors over my time, and they kind of brought the same thing. If I pay you or give you any type of monetary gifts, I need to give it to my deacons. I need to give it to my elders. I need to give it to my all of the workers in the church. And and I had two responses for that. One, I said yes, you should. For one, that's one response. And the second one would be, how many of your elders, deacons, Sabbath school teachers went to school for that particular gift that they're using in the church? How many
Mhm.
of how many of them have spent time, uh, excuse me, practicing on their gifts or trying to hone in on their gifts? Not to say that they don't. Of course, you have to be prepared to serve. But how many times have they sat and just for hours just study how to be a better deacon, how to be a better usher, how to be a better elder? How many times have they gone and sat in the classroom and took notes and had to be tested on their knowledge of that particular area? So, so it's not to say that they should not have some type of appreciation shown to them. I'm all for it. If the church can do so, then allow the church can do so. But as you mentioned before, there every church cannot do that.
Right.
So, and interestingly enough, I had a conversation maybe a month ago, if that, with a very prominent musician in the Adventist church, and we were discussing back and forth. And my statement to them was simply this: it's not always about the financial part given to a musician. And I was speaking for myself. But I did say to her that I think that this is something that most Adventist musicians may have this same sentiment. It's not always about the monetary gift that you
Hmm.
can give to me as a musician. It goes back to one of the words that we mentioned earlier in the conversation. It's about the appreciation.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
not necessarily you don't have to pay me to do my gift, but when I am giving my gift, don't don't try to just handle me any kind of way when I'm doing so.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So and
I
I'm
was just,
Mhm.
I was just about to share that. I'm saying the issue is not necessarily having the money to pay, but having the understanding of the appreciation. Um,
Correct.
I pastor the church in Brooklyn, and some people who are listening know what church that is. But there's a lot of traffic to
Brooklyn.
get into Brooklyn. There is,
Mhm.
especially if you're midweek, you want to bring the musician in for the midweek. There are so many things that the musician's life is involved with, or even the volunteer, the one who opens the door, the one the one who locks the door, one who makes sure that the sanctuary is clean. If the
Correct.
churches not necessarily look for money to pay them, but looks for ways to appreciate them, I think would go a long way, as opposed to just trying to find a dollar to say, here, thank you, which sometimes
Mhm.
can be can be misunderstood or even used as a way of just saying, hey, I don't really care about you. But if we show appreciation, remember birthdays, remember anniversaries, things like that. My wife was a music coordinator, and she would provide, and we did this out of our pockets, but she would provide juices and fruits, so that while they're waiting while the sermon is going on, they're in a little green room and getting some refreshments, so that when they come back to the instrument, they're ready to go, and that went a long way. We couldn't pay them what they would do, but they felt appreciated and they were willing to do the service that was asked of them.
Here's something that happened outside of Adventism not too long ago. A well-known pastor was getting up to speak, and as he stood up to speak, his musicians proceeded to walk off the platform.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And he checked them as they were walking off the platform.
Yeah.
Now, those musicians, based on the industry and who they were playing for, they were being paid well, as it goes with musicians. But they still felt a level of disrespect or not being appreciated for things that may be going on with them that may not be aware of by that particular pastor, but they're getting paid. So again, it goes back to the point. It's not always about the monetary gift that you can put in a musician's hand, but it's also is how you appreciate that person goes a whole lot further. I would play for a church or a pastor that showed appreciation and just say, listen, I know we can't pay you, but here's the gift card. Or here's go eat and do something that will show that I appreciate your gift to the body. Not necessarily that I have to put something in your pocket, because it's just the way that you handle the situation, the way that you handle people in general. So when you go to someone and if you approach them as if they are a employee, because you are giving them some type of monetary gifts, myself, I may sometimes take offense to that, because for one, what this gift is that my home church is giving me may not even be half of what I can get from another church. But
there's
go ahead, Joe.
Oh, go ahead. I was looking at the comments that are coming through, and I saw one of the comments that somebody said there are plenty of professionals in the church that give their talents and stuff. Like I said, it goes back to those two things that I said, like especially on a regular weekly basis, the amount of preparation and the amount of expectation that goes into what makes a church service work musically is just more. It's just a bigger expectation and preparation than say somebody that's like reading announcements or whatever else they do.
Yeah, I mean, but like I said before, I am a musician that feels that if a church is able to give some type of a love offering honorarium to other auxiliaries in the church, because the truth of the matter is this: we're all different parts of one body.
Yep.
So in order for that body to function and to do what it has to do, all of the parts have to come together in order to make that body move. So if you're going to show appreciation to one part of the body, and the other part of the body say, "Hey, well, you got your hand washed, but my hand's still dirty."
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it goes a long way to show that you appreciate that person. Yes, they're investing their time, they're investing their gifts to the church, and of course, again, it's more seen when there's a musician that is playing, or if a singer is singing. They are more visible, but there are some things that happen behind the scenes that we don't necessarily see, but makes it possible for other things to happen in a church service. So again, I would always go back to say, if a church is in the position where they can do something for other ministries and things of that nature, then by all means go ahead and do so. But they don't have the option. So then you're left with the choice of, okay, what do I, or where do I invest those things as far as monetary gifts, who do I pay that to? And sadly, a lot of our Adventist churches are staffed with musicians who are not Adventists.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you
And,
can't.
I think Colleen said that there are Sabbath school teachers and other trained teachers. She also talked about other professionals
Mhm.
who are doing who spend time and effort in the church, but no expectation of compensation. But that doesn't mean the church shouldn't give some kind of appreciation. And I
Right.
Well,
And
think
she,
that's
it's funny that she mentioned Wednesday night. I don't know any musicians that just get paid for playing Wednesday night anywhere. Like, well, actually, okay, I can think of one like that where they just have like for every rehearsal they'll get something, for every church service they'll
yeah,
get something.
yeah,
It is in the Adventist church, but yeah, I think I can think of one. But
yeah.
most churches, I mean, if you're playing on Wednesday night, I mean, you're just playing. But I think one thing that's interesting is a lot of the churches that I've been working with lately have agreed with their musicians to salary. Oh wow, cool. What's up, Joe? Very cool. So yeah, so um, that's what happens. I mean, I'm trying to think of the 5 churches that I work with right now. Let's see, one. I'm just counting real quick. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, so I actually get a salary, just a straight salary, fixed rate salary for all the churches that I work for. It's interesting.
Yeah.
And then, but some, like I said, some do. In the past, I've done the whole whatever rehearsal you play for, you get paid for whatever church service. So yeah, it's different. I think
Yeah.
for Sabbath school, I haven't seen like any one habitual Sabbath school teacher. Um, especially, I'm just trying to think of like, especially like teaching people to actually get out and do stuff. Like I said, I think looking into what actually does it take to play and I guess play on the Sabbath. Like what kind of preparation happens? Like what happens in a rehearsal? What role does each instrumentalist or each vocalist or each minister of music play? And figuring out what kind of compensation happens for that. It's an interesting thing. 'Cause I know there's even singers a lot of times that be like, we sing, and the minister of music is the only one that's getting paid, or the worship leader is the only one that's getting paid.
Well,
Um,
I think it kind of goes back to something I was saying earlier. Probably got chopped up with my technical
mhm.
issues, but it goes back to your preparation. I don't think that just because you serve in a particular capacity that they warrant. Since we're speaking about musically, that there warrants a compensation for that.
Right,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah, so I think that you have to look at the quality of what you're getting, also the excellence and the spirit in which that person is working in.
Hmm.
So I think that it does take, and it goes back to understanding what it takes for that local church, because some people may think that I need a Joe Goodwin to be my musician, when in actuality you may just need a Thomas McPhee.
Oh,
So you
whatever,
may not.
man. This
Well, I mean,
guy.
but I'm saying,
Yes.
you have to be realistic in what you're looking for.
Oh my goodness.
You can't just go
Right.
out and say, I want the top shelf musician, and my church budget may be for someone that maybe the shelf or two below, and then we can work up to that, right? So I think you also have to be realistic in what what that local church needs and how you are looking to invest into that. Because at the end of the
Good
day,
question.
you need to be a good steward of whatever funds that church have as the leader or the pastor of that church.
Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
great point. Great point.
But
Listen, our
there's.
time is well
Oh, go ahead.
spent, gentlemen. And I want to get at least a couple of in on this. And we could have probably spent the entire discussion on
Mhm.
Right.
this because it hits, I think it hits everybody in so many different unique ways. But
Yeah.
Roger, if we could just dip our toes in the water of
yeah.
that third question there.
But
Yeah.
Um,
Let's go.
I just want to approach and acknowledge our viewers. Some
Yeah.
great stuff in the chat.
yeah,
On,
truly,
Really.
on both
Truthfully.
sides, on both
absolutely.
sides of this discussion we just shared. And I believe if you have time to go back through, I'm asking our viewers to go
Yeah,
back
yeah,
through and read through and interact, because this conversation is still going to be live. after we are finished. But there are some very good input. And I, as a pastor, I'm looking and I'm listening and I'm reading and I'm hearing and I'm saying, okay, maybe I need to look at it a little differently.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I may need to look at this thing a little differently when I deal with the musician. But yes, we want to talk a little bit about the pandemic and
Yeah.
Adventist music.
Yeah.
The pandemic stopped church. Period. Put a break on it. It just locked it down. There was some churches now. Their musicians had to make the switch and be able to get equipment to play on the Zoom or and get ready to play in a
That was
virtual space
we were
that
just playing
some of them
videos, Raj.
weren't ready for. You know what's
Dude,
that?
you just brought up a very good point. Music instruments are expensive.
Yeah.
So is you know so is music, so are music lessons. Just to the point of the woman. God bless everybody that's been in the chat link. All these professional people do that. It's very rare that you have a professional that takes I guess that takes classes and goes to school to teach Sabbath school. It's just not gonna happen.
Or
It's just not gonna happen.
those lessons as a child.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you why that's not necessarily fair. This is why it's not necessarily fair. One,
Okay.
we actually do have a lot of trained teachers who are
We do
teaching
have some,
Sabbath,
yeah.
right?
Okay.
And I'll say a lot. There are some. Let me say it like that. There are some who are trained teachers who are teaching Sabbath school.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of our church musicians are not trained musicians. They're not. We have a lot of them, but in the rank and file churches that where I'm pastor, that 30-member church, that 15-member church, that 60, 70-member church, I don't have no trained musicians. Nobody went to school to get a degree in music. That's not what's going on there. So
Right.
You just reminded me of something. One thing that I'm saying this, I think I've said this to Thomas before, but one thing that I talked to Sarah about, like when we, like before she passed, and just talking about, and then you were asking about Adventist Musician Network goals. I think one thing that we haven't touched on yet is trying to mentor churches and mentor church musicians and try to find programs so that more musicians can be raised up in Adventist churches.
good,
Um,
awesome.
yeah, like that's something that that's like one of my, I guess, dreams and goals for the future, like for sure.
Yeah.
So I mean, we'll talk about that some more. I know we're about to talk about the
Yeah.
pandemic. And
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
yeah, I know that's me too. That's my fault too. But we're gonna talk about the
No.
pandemic.
Yeah. Go ahead, Raj. I'm sorry, man.
No. So we had some musicians had to make the shift, the pivot, like many pastors. I've heard
Yeah.
pastors, and this is no shade on them. They could not deal with doing their preaching online because it wasn't what they were used to.
Yeah.
Was that the same for musicians in terms of having to transition to a virtual space, that it wasn't what they were used to? I mean, how problematic was it for musicians?
Woo. It's still
Yeah.
problematic for musicians.
I
Go ahead,
think-
Thomas. I'm gonna let him answer something.
The biggest problem was, as it was mentioned earlier, was that we had churches that were shut down. So a lot of times, some of those churches that shut down, they also shut down the musicians. Now, there are some churches that when they went to the smaller online only church services, they would keep the musicians or had some select singers to come in. There were some churches that continued that as well. But there are some musicians that you would see and hear, hey, listen, man, I'm hurting. I mean, this pandemic is hurting me, and there are some musicians who were just strictly musicians. So that was their only source of income. So with that being the case, when the pandemic hit, that hit them right in the pocket.
Yep.
Right. So then you had musicians that had to adjust. By adjusting, meaning you saw a lot more musicians coming up with social media platforms, where they were sharing their things online, which of course they would develop that hopefully to a point where they could monetize that and subsidize their income that way. So personally, I think that I've heard a lot over my lifetime that says that when God has equipped you, He also will make, when He gives you a vision, He will also make provision for that vision. So I
Mhm.
think it's a matter of just saying, "Hey, look, God, what is it that I should do? How should I pivot, and what does that pivot look like for me in this particular time?" I
Right.
think that when it comes to the churches, as far as the pandemic goes, uh, even with the pastors have to look at the overall goal for that particular church as well. Then also look at say, hey, let's talk to the musicians or talk to the whoever it is to see how we can come together and make this grow. One of the greatest things that I saw that I thought what I thought was a great thing during the pandemic was Stephen Madness at Oakwood University created a virtual choir.
Yeah.
So you had
Mhm.
people from all over the actually all over the world for the most part that would come together, learn these songs, and they would present that music as a virtual choir for church service. So it's just a matter of thinking, as we would say, outside the box. Just because
Yeah.
the pandemic hit or there's some type of a tragic situation that hits, that should not ever shut down or stop the ministry from moving forward and doing what it is called to do.
Mhm. Wow, that's a dope. Really, really cool. I love that. I can speak from my own experience with churches. Um, when everything shut down, of course, obviously that affected me. And I wasn't planning for five churches then or working with five churches. It's actually because of the pandemic that I started working for so many churches. Um, those I would say those first 2 months I didn't do much of anything as far as playing anywhere because everything was shut down. Now, luckily, I talked about this whole salary thing. The main church, as far as monetarily, that pays me, I'm on salary, of course. So they honored that pretty much through the whole pandemic.
Oh, goodness.
So that was a blessing. So that meant that I mean, for the most part, I mean, they paid me enough where I don't, if I don't want to, I don't really have to go and get another job. Um, so I was able to do that. Now, as far as the Adventist church that I played for, we shut down, and there wasn't church service for like maybe 3 months, and then finally decided to start doing it virtually. At that time, it's so funny because I actually had stepped down from the minister of music position 2 weeks before the pandemic happened. We got another minister of music, like, that stepped in, but she just felt the immediate pressure of doing the music, being the head of the music department was too much for her. So she called me up like, I can't do this. Like 2 weeks in, I can't do this. And then next week, church was already shut down. So I was like, whatever. So yeah, so I took it upon myself to go on and start doing music again for the church, and I'm still there now. But so I would record every week, or I would use some music I had already recorded and use that as music for the services. Now I will say that that whole 2 years that I did that, I wasn't paid like for the virtual services, and even when we started service back, I wasn't getting paid. So yeah, so even though I was getting paid before and I'm getting paid now, that whole 2 years, even though I was providing the music, I wasn't getting paid. But you know what? But I felt appreciated, and I think that when musicians have a good relationship with churches, and when they feel appreciated, I think that they're much more willing to understand when money isn't to a point where you can get paid for everything. In fact, one of the churches that I'm playing for now, even it's a very small church, and they can't pay me every week. I'm there. They let me know the situation, and of course, at that time, I had a choice, like stay or go. But I'm getting taken care of so much. I mean, I'm so blessed. I'm just like, let me go on and keep playing for this church, even though I'm not getting paid every week. So yeah, I think that's how it was in the pandemic. A lot of musicians made decisions. We did lose one musician. I will say that, like this on our staff. Actually, two. There's two that haven't come back yet since the pandemic, and I think that's the case everywhere. Like some people have made decisions to not come back. Some have been there, but yeah, I know a lot of churches couldn't pay their staff at all. Which I mean, it happens. I would hope that musicians that are in music ministry actually do consider it ministry, and that because they consider it ministry, find ways to be involved in ministry that doesn't mean that you have to always take from the church that you give sometimes. I'm very much an advocate of musicians getting paid, but I'm also a huge advocate of being in partnership with churches.
Exactly.
Wow. Listen, gentlemen, this has been a fascinating, great conversation. We so much appreciate your contribution to it. We've got a lot of people on here who are watching, who are listening.
Yeah.
Some being exposed to Adventist Musicians Network for their very first time.
Awesome.
Some of them have joined late. They're going to have to go back and explore and find out a little bit more about it. But for those that are here, just before we let them go, what are some things that you might be able to share with them that might be some ways that they can help to support the mission and objectives of the Adventist Musician Work Network? Some of them might not even be musicians at all, and some of them might be. And by the way, before I let you guys answer, those of you that have joined late and did not get a chance to let us know whether you are a musician or not, we want to invite you to do that in the chat. So if you're a musician and you're a singer, if you're a keyboardist, if you're a guitarist, if you're a bassist, if you're a drummer, whatever it is that you are, if you just throw that in the chat, we'd love to know. And I don't care if you haven't played a flute since you were in third grade. We want to know. Throw that in there. We want to know all the different instruments that are out there. If you play more than one instrument, just drop that in the chat for us. But gentlemen, what can you share with our audience today, both musicians and non-musicians? How can they be a part of the Adventist Musicians Network? How can they support? What can they do to help make the Adventist Musicians Network even more a success than it has been already?
Well, what I would say first and foremost is we do solicit and need your prayers for the ministry and what we do. That's the most important thing, so that whatever we find our hands to do, whatever God has gives to us to do, that we'll be able to do to His name, honor, and glory. We do for all musicians, and when we say musicians, we are looking for, we mean those who are instrumentalists, if you're a vocalist. At this point, even if you're just a pure lover of music, if you just have an interest in that, there is a on Facebook page that we have, Adventist Musician Network. You can always go there, and of course, a presence on YouTube as well. So we do need to have individuals who have also any input, because you don't necessarily have to be a musician to have good ideas for how to improve upon the music ministry. So if you do have any ideas or concepts, you can leave a message there on the Facebook page. If you want to send us an email with any suggestions or ideas, please feel free. That is also Adventist Musician Network at gmail.com. We solicit your suggestions. We do have some projects that's coming out. So there are different areas that we are looking for people with areas of expertise, of marketing, things of that nature. So if you have any expertise in that area or know anyone that could be an assistance to help grow this ministry, because we do want to make sure that we are doing this outside of the borders of just our within the States. We are an international group, so we want to serve the international community of Adventist musicians, the world church as a whole. So any of those areas that you feel, or if you just feel that there's something you can contribute that within this nonprofit organization, that you can be a part of that, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to hear from you and to solicit your prayers again and your assistance.
Yes.
All right.
And I'll add to that. Thomas talked about the Facebook page. We actually have two Facebook pages for Adventist Musician Network. The one that was highlighted already is the fan page. We ask everybody, no matter if you're a musician or not, that we ask everybody to like that page. And then also the YouTube page, we ask that you subscribe to that page. Also, like I said, on Facebook, there's two pages. So the other page is for, and I said this earlier, this page is for any one that is an Adventist musician, a singer, or anybody that's involved in the music department at Adventist churches, whether you're Adventist or not. But if you're an Adventist artist, someone that actually records music and performs music and stuff, we also invite you to join the group too. And it's the same as the fan page. It's all Adventist Musician Network International. So search
All right.
those.
Well, I have a request of the
Yeah.
Adventist Musicians Network that I'm going to make live on the stream
Uh-oh.
here. There are two of them. Somebody else actually kind of beat me to it. Aaron Smith says music scholarships are needed for young people. I would love to the Adventist Musicians Network provide some scholarships or give some scholarships. So you can solicit from our audience, from the whole online audience, to start building up some funds to be able to, like Joel, you said it earlier about teaching our own children in our churches to be able to play powerful thing. I'd love to see that. Number two is that we are in a brand new world. And those of us, particularly pastors and churches that have been a little bit more techie, we know that we cannot come online and just play music. Copyright infringement.
That's such a good subject.
As techie as I am, and as knowledgeable as I am about this, my church gets flagged almost every week on Facebook and YouTube for somebody playing something that we should not have been playing, that we didn't have a license to play. And so we get that message. Facebook has blocked your stream in 274 countries based on, and I have to, contest them. Now, I pay Story Blocks, Epidemic Sound, Envato. I play some of these streaming services where we can use streaming music, where we pay for a license to stream all of this stuff.
Yeah.
And sometimes we still get blocked. But here's the problem. On all of these commercial sites where you get libraries full of tons and tons of music, there is such a small, tiny offering of church music and of gospel music. There's almost like out there. I would love to see Adventist Musicians Network pull some stuff together, create a bank of library that we will pay for. I am paying all of these other sites already. Tons of our churches and ministries are paying all of these other folk already, and we can't get the type of music that fits within our worship style and the music. Would love to be able to have something that you have created, that we have created within the Adventist Church, that stands as a vibrant, viable resource for music that we can use in our online streaming.
Man,
so that's
I
my
love
request.
that. I love that. See, and this is why the network even exists, is for ideas like this to come about and to see change come about from these kind of ideas.
And to
I was
add
gonna
to
say, okay.
to add to that, not only the scholarships, but even if you do copyright education, because as a community,
absolutely.
At the conference level, I get a lot of questions from churches. What should we do? How should we deal with it? And I'll be honest with you, the conference doesn't know, but you being business, being in the world in that arena would be, number one, credible, and will give us the right information that's needed. And so I think that'll be something that I would love to see, a place where we can go, especially for Adventist churches, can go and get the information that's needed for their situation.
Yeah, that's so interesting you say that. I know that one of the things that Sarah, right before she passed, Sarah and Thomas. Yeah, I said that right at first. So we were talking about things like joining the Recording Academy, which is the organization that puts on the Grammys. I'm a 10-year member, and we were talking about getting other people that are in the organization to actually join. And the Recording Academy has a bunch of educational resources. And of course, I don't mind sharing some of that stuff. And I've been thinking about like doing copyright workshops and stuff like that. I literally write. Oh my god! I'll just play. I know I've written close to 1,000 songs probably, and I know about 100 and something are actually available on like streaming services and all that stuff for different artists that I've worked with and stuff. So I'm very familiar with the process for sure. that's pretty much what I do. Like outside of playing for church, I just do music.
I love
So
it. I love it. I think we
it's
got
a beautiful
something
thing.
here.
So
Well,
I'm more than willing and to like share some of that
Yeah.
knowledge for sure. And I'm sure there's others too. So we'll have to work on that, Thomas. Like just
right.
we might have to dedicate a show to that. Like
Yeah,
just
Pastor
concentrate.
Paul, to your 2 points, I do think those are excellent ideas. What I
Yeah.
would say to your audience that's watching now, or they may see this later, if you have any anyone who wants to assist in the development for those scholarships, please reach
Mm,
out to us to those platforms, either the Facebook, just send us a message there, and also. Pastors, if we can have pastors, because we always want to work through the actual conferences in the churches and the pastors as well. So
mhm.
the music library, it'd be very great if we can get the corporations with the regional conferences, NAD, local pastors. We can come up with a method of getting information down to the conferences, so they can trickle down to the local churches. For all of any artists who have original music, that they would not mind contributing to their library, so we can build up their library, their bank of music. If
Mm.
we can't do it by ourselves, again, go back to the body. If we can have individuals that can submit their music to us, we will be more than happy to put together that project so that churches can have those music available. Because again, it's all about ministry.
That's
Mhm.
right. Right.
Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Thank you again, gentlemen. We got to bounce. This is the latest we've ever gone, Raj. So
Yes.
Hey, we didn't even have a
Sir.
reset moment, but this was
I
great. This was good conversation.
Mhm.
We thank you for sharing about the Adventist Music Network. We do want to give a shout out, an appreciation actually to the CEO who sadly passed away. Sarah was a strong supporter of Pastors Roundtable. She'll be on every week in the chat, sharing, bringing
Mm.
information. Matter of fact, we had her on as a guest when we did
Mhm.
an appreciation for
Yeah.
musicians. She was one of our guests. So we thank you, gentlemen, for continuing to carry the torch that she
Mhm.
had, the passion she
yeah.
had for Adventist musicians and the music, just sacred music in general. And we pray that whatever we can do at PRT to support the network and support you individually, do not hesitate to ask, because
Right.
we're part of the team.
Much
Beautiful.
appreciated.
Beautiful.
All right. Take us. Sorry, Tyrone. I got to hit that too. The CCLI licenses. CCL licenses.
Yes.
I talked
Yes.
to those folk, and what they told me is yeah, you can buy our license, but you're still going to get flagged on Facebook and YouTube depending on what studio the music comes out of. And if you do,
Mhm.
good luck with that.
Right.
That's what they told me. Their licenses, even though
Yeah.
they have an
Absolutely.
internet and online license, they're saying basically our license really works for sheet music and stuff that you're using in the building. What the
Mm.
stuff that you're doing online, it's not going to get you stopped. It's not going to keep you from getting flagged. Now, I
Yeah.
talked to
That's
them
why.
about a year ago. That things develop, I'm sure, over time. But that was my conversation with them.
Yeah, a lot of it's so new, and honestly, it's very new for musicians. What's been happening for years is that so many musicians have been having their music streamed, whether it be on streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music, and they're getting pennies. I just remember
Yeah.
a couple of famous examples. For example, Pharrell. I mean, didn't think I was be talking about Pharrell here, but I mean Pharrell with his song "Happy." I remember him literally saying that he got like $2,000 from like a billion streams of the song on Spotify. And
Wow.
at that point, I was like, this is serious. I mean, I knew it was serious. I remember even people like when Napster started. Like I remember seeing it coming when Napster started. Like I know Metallica and Dr. Dre, they were talking about like there's gonna come a day where musicians are just not gonna be getting paid from this stuff because of the way that it's going about. And everybody laughed then, but then 20 years later, like it's happening. So musicians finally started cracking down. I would say the Recording Academy actually played a big part in this. In fact, I actually literally met with a couple of senators in my state for the Recording Academy, and we talked about just trying to find ways. I think they signed into law. In fact, I believe it was Donald Trump that signed into law, like a law about radio and also streaming, to be able to either collect royalties or flag people basically for content that is used. So, for example, if I write a song, and especially if it's done, if I go through one of those channels that isn't independent, then it's definitely a lot more likely. So, say for example, like a major label like Warner or a major label like Sony or whatever. If I license to any of those, and somebody uses my music without me giving permission, then that's going to automatically be flagged. And I think to your point earlier, there's so many different music companies out that you almost never know which ones are going to get flagged and which ones aren't. It just really depends.
And Sony is a beast. Just say that Sony is a beast.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sony ain't no joke. So I would say Sony and Warner are two of the biggest ones for sure. Yeah.
They won't just flag you. They will take your stuff off the air, off the whole internet. Not just in 270 countries, in every country. They will drop you down.
It's no joke. Right. But yeah, streaming has become a problem. It's become a problem with so many artists. A lot of people have literally given up on making a living doing music because, CDs aren't selling anymore. Records, of course, records are just kind of in and out. But I mean, it's not too many people making a living off of selling vinyl. But yeah, CDs, especially once the CDs went out, and especially once streaming services came in and you didn't have to pay for digital as much, you could just pay like a one-time fee a month of $9.99 to stream however many songs you want. Yeah, that kind of, killed a lot of people's dreams and hopes for making music. So the only way people could make music was to travel and do it. And also, even then, selling merchandise. So, and there aren't that many Adventist musicians that are traveling around and touring. So that just really cuts down on how many Adventist artists there are out there that are actually actively touring and actually making a profit and making a living doing it.
Sure. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We will probably have to do a continuation show, especially dealing with the pay and dealing with some of the licenses issues.
Yes,
we'll be happy to join you with that. So, Thomas, Joel, thank you again for joining us. Thank you so much. We will have this show will be up in our archives. Please remember to support Pastors Roundtable at the support page.
Yes,
please remember
absolutely.
to subscribe to Pastors Roundtable. And on our YouTube page, we're almost there. I'm not even sure. I didn't check it. But we are almost there with our 1,000 level. And we look forward to having you and join us next week, where we continue to partner with you to make ministry relevant,
resource,
and real.
Goodbye, take care, everybody. Peace.
Cool. Bless.